Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. We have a cat. We're giving out some scritches, some scratches, some noggin scritches, some back scritches, and even a couple tail thumps, maybe, right? And you give him the old thump right here in the crook of the tail. Little belly jiggle. Oh, nice and fluffy. This is just a 16-pound fuzzy slug, is what this thing is. You know what? So we have a cat. I think we have what we pretty well everything we need in order to get through tonight's project, where I want to create a random setting with you all, similar to the characters we're creating. Right? We take some random prompts and let's string them together and let's make a region and a settlement inside of it. And then in part 2, I'm going to open up some software called Wonder Draft, and I'll show you how even a scrub lord like me, who really, I'm halfway decent with MS Paint, can make a really cool looking map in this software. Oh, okay, so Flumph, tonight I have 4 boxes of Dragon Heist remaining. That said, I don't have them here. At the store, I still have some Monster Menagerie 1, 2, and I may have a box or 2 left of Tyranny of Dragons. But I don't have them physically at the house here. So, if you wanted to... hey, Roxy, good to see you. If you wanted to sponsor some minis, because I was at the store dropping off some boxes to get shipped out on Monday. Oh, speaking of which, real quick, I'm sorry, Flumph, Coffee Cat. I brought your minis to the store in my car, and when I went into the store, I completely forgot to take your box in. So your minis made it to the store, just not inside of it. So your minis are going to get sent out on Monday. I'm very sorry about that, Coffee Cat. I didn't realize that until I was digging around in the back of my car to drop off some more boxes tonight. And, I immediately am like, oh my gosh, really? But I wanted to tell you in person so you knew. Because you are owed follow through on that. Flumph, if you wanted to sponsor any of those boxes, I'm fairly certain I have 2 Tyranny of Dragons at the store. And I have at least 6 Monster Menagerie 2s. And I probably have at least 4 Monster Menagerie 1s. So I can't open them on stream. But what I can do, if you wanted to sponsor any of those, is I'll send a message to my opener tomorrow. And let them know to hold them aside. And then I can pop them at a later time. And show you the pictures. Or something along those lines. Or I could do a bonus stream. Because I have to finish... Undertale. I'm on the literally last part, not just the troll last part. So I can even do it on stream if you wanted. Aside from that, what I have tonight are these bad boys right here to finish off the ones that I physically have here in the house. Let's see. So Jarl, you have Wonder Draft 2? Awesome. So hey, if I mess something up and you know how to fix it or to approach something, you are welcome to give some advice too. I'm not claiming to be an expert who's used it since its 0.0.1 inception. I'm a recent adopter and I've been playing around with it. And so what I'll do is I'll take what we're going to develop here in this section and we can map it out. And hey, if you have any comments or suggestions, Jarl, then you're welcome to share them. Being able to touch a cat's belly without dying is like rubbing a cloud that loves you. That is very wise, Estrellas. And yes, his belly is so soft. Like, you just want to go...
Let's get 1 box of Dragon Heist for tonight. The other 12 bucks is for the orphanage I mentioned earlier XD.
Got it. So, everyone, Mr. Flumph is going to our orphanage and is going to be adopting some miniatures. So, thank you very much for that. Give him an applause and a thank you for stepping up and giving a mini a good home here. TJ, so yeah, it's text to speech. Through the donation button, your message is read in a male German accent. For bits of $1 or more that are donated, it's a female Australian accent. And then no, I'm sorry, is it a Welsh? It might be female Welsh. Oh yes, and then for subscribers, it's a female Australian accent. All right, so Flumph, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which one are you feeling tonight, bud? While he's determining which box he wants, class. Speaking of being a teacher, I'm gonna need you to open. You're gonna need two books tonight: your Dungeon Master's Guide and your Player's Handbook. So make sure you have those handy, right? I even have your worksheet, class. Come on, I have your worksheet here, so you can follow along. Oh, it's roll exclamation point roll 1d4. Yep, just like that. Or I mean exclamation point 1d4. You don't need roll. The exclamation point roll was you might have done it just like a second too soon because there's like a 5-second global cooldown on dice rolls, Flumph. Jarl sniped your roll. It stops on 3. Okay, so this was 1, 2, and 3. And let's see what's inside box number 3. Now, the player's handbook for tonight is going to be how we're going to generate what are our 2, or if we really want 3 major terrain features of the region. Everything else is going to be done through the Dungeon Master's Guide. We're going to follow some prompts for some random rolls, and then we will we'll discuss it, right? We'll make a and speaking of flumps, we'll make a culture around this region, you know, the people who live there, etc. and so forth. I know all things. I am the all-seeing Jarl. Praise Jarl, says Flumph, as the tendrils make a kind of a squishy slurp, slurp, slurp sound. Oh, yeah. It's a solid mini. In fact, we even have one of them in the orphanage if you're looking to pick one up. All right. Let's see what is in store for Mr. Flumph. We are going to begin with a Vargui, or a Vargoyle, however you'd like to pronounce it. A vampiric, like a vampire's head that flies around with it. Think of it like an undead sturge, in a way. Next up, we have a member of the City Watch. After that, hey, Happy Donuts. Yeah, Trust a Flump has not only sponsored a box, but is adopting some minis out of our orphanage. So praise to the Flump. After that, hey, looky here, an animated door. Or lastly, if you would prefer, we have a Griffin Cavalry unit. Griffin Cavalry. You got it. Griffins are OP. Flump, do you all do a lot of mounted combat in D&D time? Yeah, you're very welcome. And hey, don't thank me, thank the D4 if this is a piece that you've been looking for. Not really in D&D time? I gotcha. Which, for any of you who don't know here, this is one of the hosts of D&D Time, which is another channel here in our corner of Twitch. And they run some workshops, and they do run open games, like some weekly one-shots. So if you're looking to get into a game, go check them out, please. Yeah, I suppose it could be. Well, maybe not 3 D&D with flying, but you know, if the characters were on horses, or I don't know, you had a rolling combat where they were like all in the back of a wagon, sort of like, you know, chasing across open plains, and they had to, you know, defend the wagon from some monsters chasing them, or things along those lines. But I get what you're saying for the purposes of at least the Friday one-shots. You had a boss battle literally in the beak of a giant pelican rock last night. Oh, okay. I missed that one. Jarl, yes, you are in this channel. We are newbie friendly. And you know what? D&D Time over here, they are also newbie friendly. So if you have questions, you have come to the correct place. And when we're not streaming online, you're welcome to join us on our Discord as well. And I would urge you to also check out Mr. Flump. If you would like to share your channel address and or a link to your Discord, you are very much welcome to do so. Yeah, Coffee Cat, I very much agree. And really, that's where we kind of have a nice yin-yang between the channels. A lot of like they host very good workshops, though that tends to be what I mainly focus on, and we spend most of our week doing. And then over on Fridays and Sundays, or at least every other Sunday, but every Friday, Pete and Jeremy host these open hour-long one-shots for new players and even returning players and old-timers as well. There we go. Alright, well, now that I don't have a cat on my desk, I can have my juice. Well, thank you, Jarl, and I really hope that you're going to enjoy your experience, because we're very happy to meet new players, and both communities are very friendly and are willing to offer a lot of advice and fun. Hey, Coffee, it'll be great to have you back on Tuesday. Alright, so let's get back to our dice roller here. Is that a goodbye you're taking off, Happy Donuts, or are you offering that to Jarl, who is a newcomer? Alright, so while you are while we're discussing this and welcoming new players, responding, gotcha, Donuts. Let's get some prompts, right? And the reason why we're going to the player's handbook for what kind of a map are we going to make is because in the player's handbook, both druids and rangers have abilities that are specific to a particular biome. And in this case, druids not only are alphabetically first, but also it's a little bit easier laid out. Druids have these 8 different terrains that they can operate in on a special basis. And Rangers are going to have the same 8 available to them as well. So what I want to do is I want to roll 2d8 and figure out what kind of an area we are going to be designing. And it'll primarily feature these two. Now, does that mean that we can't have, I don't know, we roll something that's like, oh, and there's a bunch of soldiers made of salt in the middle of the field. Maybe it's a mini desert, and that's fine. But primarily, we are going to have a biome that will have 7 and 1. It'll be Arctic and swamp. Interesting. Ooh, how are we going to get this going, huh? Arctic and swamp. Already my mind is whirring. Okay, now, class, you can put away your player's handbooks and open up your Dungeon Master's guides to page 16. Estrella says Louisiana on our one our one cold day a year. But all year long. So really it would just be what? Like everything is a slushy? Everything's just a big old slushy down there. Now in the DMG, you have awesome information, and I'll urge you to read the entries, especially if you're trying to come up with settlements and such on your own. Primarily what we're going to pluck from these pages is government here. Actually, I should put page 18 for governments here. We're going to roll a percentile and find out which kind of government is ruling over these lands. Well, Jarl, then, come along on the journey with us and follow along on the PDFs. Because, hey, one day you might have those pages to pluck the information from. And if you ever want to step up as a DM, I want to make sure that you're empowered to use that information and understand it and feel comfortable with it. TJ says, Arctic swamp. I'm now picturing a combination of the Irish moors and Scandinavia. Oh god, the myths and legends you can combine. Maybe a tundra-ish swamp area where it's constantly a degree from freezing. The moors in Lord of the Rings just iced over. Hey, keep brewing those ideas, because I think we can make something of it. The water's deadly, but if all the water is like a big slushy, don't you just want to drink it? Because it's all like, you know, cherry and cola flavored slushy mixed together. All right, here's our percentile roll. 17. That is going to be a confederacy. And for each of the government styles that they make available or they posit to you here, if you're not sure, well, what type of a government is that? Bing, bing, bing. So each individual city or town within the Confederacy governs itself, but all contribute to a league or federation that promotes, at least in theory, the common good of all member states. Conditions and attitudes toward the central government vary from place to place within the Confederacy. The Lord's Alliance in the Forgotten Realms setting is a loose confederacy of cities, while the Mror holds in the Eberron campaign setting is a confederacy of allied dwarf clans. And so what you're looking at here, think of the well, if any of you are familiar, I mean, TJ, I don't know how much you study American history, you know, or in this case, like the Revolutionary War. But think of early America, right? When you had the several states, and they were debating back and forth about how are we gonna make this a thing? How are we gonna be more than just the state of Georgia and the state of Virginia? And all up and down the East Coast here. And so during that time, you had a series of if you want good reference, by the way, look at the Federalist Papers. I'm not like a history aficionado. I'm probably at least a history buff, but the Federalist Papers can really reveal a lot of good stuff, particularly about this style of government or arguments against it. If you ever want some good plot hooks and seeds for your own campaign, draw from real life. TJ, how Australia set up and ended up getting, becoming an extension of England or its own country. Even it's unique because it's its own country that's also its own continent. Draw from your experiences. Draw from the things that you've studied and learned about. And you know what? If you want to challenge yourself, then go out and learn something that's a little bit different, a little bit outside the norm. Jarl says, my favorite slushie is lemon, lime, and bitters. I mean, are we talking about a margarita then, Jarl, or... So, for a confederacy, we're actually going to be able to develop several city-states. And, I think that'll be really good then. That'll give us a lot of, yeah, I got you, Jarl. So we could actually develop a couple interesting cities in whatever we're going to generate on our basic map. So maybe what we'll do is we'll make, this would be an equivalent of Washington, D.C., right? The District of Columbia. It's its own city-state that exists on the federal level, but it's not a state. It doesn't belong to, Maryland or Virginia. It is federal property. That so happens to be a city in which the government operates. So maybe there's this special central city inside the Confederacy. It could even be treated like one of China's special economic zones, where the normal economic tenets that belong to the rest of China are suspended inside of these special economic zones, where even Chinese citizens need permission to enter. Coca-Cola slushies are great, though. I'm not going to debate that, Dark Wolf, especially if you combine it with cherry. Hashtag just saying. Or if you look at some other places like the Panama Canal, and it has its own kind of special economic zone within it, where you have all of these global companies that are shipping back and forth from Atlantic to Pacific, and a lot of them have headquarters there because it is. The Panama is a very important trade route, just as if you look at South Africa, right? The southern tip of Africa was even still is a major trading port for those who are going around and are going from like the Indian Ocean out to the Atlantic. And so maybe we could even incorporate aspects like this. My chair is leaning back so far right now. My gosh. Oh, Roger, the Suez Canal, that's true. So the Suez Canal, out that way. Is it Egypt? And I thought, when I read Suez Canal, I was thinking somehow Iran was involved with that as well, as a cooperative or something along those lines. Is the Suez Canal just Egypt? Or, if we're talking about an Arctic swamp, if any of you remember, and I don't know if this is necessarily just American history, because it would certainly be a part of Canada too, something called the Northwest Passage. If you're familiar with the Northwest Passage. Egyptian and British before that? Okay. You know, the area that we may be generating could be like... I'll bring it up here. So, here's our world. At least if you buy into the theory that it's round, right? Come on. Anyway, so if we're going around the world here, and we want to zoom in, then we might be looking at something along these lines. All these fjords. Right? Kind of like what we're seeing here. So it can be swampy in so much that there's a lot of water, you know, and it might freeze over, or there could be special magical or just geothermal conditions where there are swamps that exist, and everywhere outside of the swamps are all icy and cold because of the winds and the conditions. But the swamps will still bubble and house abundant life because it is sitting over some thermal vents of some kind. And you can even find that out in, you know, some thermal vents in the various fjords and channels that exist. I wonder if we could do something similar like what's down in South America here. So, yeah, even something like this could work out, too. So, all of these islands, archipelagos and such. By the way, bada boom, what was I talking about? And I mean, there's a place like this, but I mean, who would live here, right? I mean, come on. Woo. All right, I'm having too much fun. Let's put this away for right now. Arctic swamp is kind of what the muskeg is as well. I haven't heard of that, Roger Twy. Can you explain that to me, please? It's donut-shaped, everyone. Donuts. Cooler people live in the smaller one to the east. Ah. Well, you know what? I'm sure we have, because we have several New Zealanders who frequent this channel, and I'm sure that they would agree with you. TJ says, the land is never fully solid, the spirits are never quite free. Always restless and vengeful, but never truly knowing why. Muskeg is an Arctic swamp. It's not anywhere... it's not anywhere where anyone would want to live. It's not frozen solid in the summer. Where is it located, Roger? All right, so we have this. Now, let's go to page 108. Class. And when I make a region, and you could do this completely differently, I want to make sure that my players can have a couple things that will help identify this region. How is it going to stand out? Now, the fact we have an Arctic swamp itself may be enough, but, you know, there's people who are living here or who have lived here. You know, or, I mean, if you want a purely, like, virgin, pristine area, you can do that as well. But if we're going to create a settlement, then people have lived here and done things. So I like to add at least 3 unique features to an area that I want to generate. Whether it's a city, a state. Now, of course, a state can have 100. But as we're zooming out, the city has 3 interesting things. the county has 3 interesting things, and one of those might be in the city, but there's 2 others elsewhere. The state has 3 major interesting things that the state is known for. And then so on and so on and so on, right? As we just have these 3 things that continually float upwards. What I like to do is have 2 of them be some kind of a monument, and a third one be a weird locale of some make or model. Yeah, that could very well be. You know, they grow because they require the cold. Or if there's some kind of, you know, we're talking about thermal vents. If any of you know about thermal vents that are underneath the water, they spew chemicals, various chemicals, and it's abundant with life, despite the fact that the water and the chemicals that come out is boiling hot. It is a foundation for a lot of life forms. And so perhaps in this case, whatever is heating, keeping hot the water, is some sort of a unique geological process that could be making special plant life or animal life or both, or a weird fusion of the 2. Northern Canada, and there's some in Alaska too. Jarl says, Muskeg is about as crap a land as you're going to get. The early Scandinavians thought they had it bad. Imagine being one of the First Nation Canadians. Is that the indigenous peoples, the Inuit and such? I guess here in the U.S. we call them Native Americans. Is First Nations Canadians that equivalent? And living there. Oh, so what is it? Is it poor soil quality because everything is frozen and it doesn't really you know, go through the processes of returning organic material to the soil? Happy Donuts is saying they've elevated wood homes. That could be. In fact, if everything outside of this swamp area is super Arctic cold, you would have to live in or on the swamp in some fashion. And so that may be the case where you have these elevated cities above the swamps that are keeping them warm. Because if you go too far, too fast outside that area, you'll freeze. And think of this too: swamps are very wet, and if you have steam and saunas and all of this natural bubbling and boiling, that's putting a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And so if you're walking above a swamp, you're going to have, you know, humidity coating you. And once you get into whatever this natural wall or this temperature shift is outside of these swamps, that could like crystallize and freeze up around you. Maybe it's a swamp that was frozen over. White dragons are known for doing that. Ah, yes. Drawing on some lore. Jarl says, hey, it's actually a really neat concept. The Arctic swamp muskeg style thing. The Confederacy, what if it's an allied group of stilt towns that were built above the land because it's literally too soft to support everything? I think we're onto something, right? Step by step, we're building this. The water temperature is massive and the oxygen level is abysmal. So then we would have to have it's oxygenated and anoxidated. What is the low oxygen count water called? I forget offhand. First Nation is Indians plus Inuit and Eskimo, also Metis, but anyway. Oh, is that another tribe? It'd be kind of like the Ainu, I guess, of Hokkaido in Japan. They could live in trees like Wookiees? Yeah, I think something like that could work. Humidity, yeah, Happy Donuts, humidity is the true killer in temperate climates. Perhaps the swampland was cursed to be an eternal winter. And yeah, that's even, is this just purely magical? In fact, as Roger Twy was saying, what if there's an ancient white dragon that just a couple hundred years ago took up residence and emits cold? And so it was a viable swamp until this thing moved in. And maybe people know about it, maybe they don't. But they found what this place is. It might have something unique. Kind of like what Flump was talking about. Some interesting vegetation that grew and adapted. Aquatic hypoxia. So so like hypoxia is low. I thought it was anaerobic. Anaerobic. It was aerobic and anaerobic. But I think those are styles of bacteria or some other things. Well, an Arctic swamp, but it's also geothermal, so it's hot, boiling hot. Imagine the humidity of that place; it'd be hard to breathe. You know what? I think it's a cool condition, right? Kind of a pun. The frozen heart of the land that the ice dragon protects. The dragon was someone else, but I'm. The dragon was someone else, but I'm in favor of it. The Great Glacier has some ice magic like that, I think, in Forgotten Realms. TJ, you're the teacher here. You have clearly studied all math and all science. You got to know this stuff. Aerobic and anaerobic. Am I incorrect? And in fact, so here, good old teacher TJ brought up a good point too. That some monsters actually have an effect on the lands that are around them. And if we come over to dragons, can have regional effects. TJ shrugging even harder. What is this? The region containing a legendary white dragon's lair is warped by the dragon's magic, which creates one or more of the following effects. Chilly fog lightly obscures the land within 6 miles of the dragon's lair. Freezing precipitation falls within 6 miles of the dragon's lair, sometimes forming blizzard conditions when the dragon is at rest. Icy walls block off areas in the dragon's lair. Each wall is 6 inches thick and a 10-foot section, etc., so forth. If the dragon dies, the fog and precipitation fade within a day. The ice wall will melt over the course of X time. So yeah, some monsters will have, lairs or other effects. Aerobic and anaerobic is really just whether oxygen is present and needed. Whereas then I guess aquatic hypoxia is just the condition. Whether it's needed or not, it's just low oxygen in the water. Nope, you're fine, Jarl. A polar aboleth is going to be a bad day. Ooh, an aboleth. That could be a very interesting. That could be very interesting for this region too. Shrugs so hard. TJ's shoulders cramp severely and requires a massage to fix. Well, hopefully you're not swimming, because then you're just gonna cramp up and blah, 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 blah. Hey, Daily, welcome. We are building a very unique region. All right, let's get back to our monuments. We're going to roll a d20 twice. 7 and 7. Interesting. So we have a ruined or toppled obelisk. And in fact, we have 2 of them. What could it mean? Actually, I'm kind of curious. Black dragons have a swampy regional effect. So, I mean, now an aboleth was brought up as well, but what if a white and black dragon live in the area, and that's what's assisting? Again, we can keep this natural. We can say it's just geothermal activity bubbling up in an Arctic environment otherwise. We can have some supernatural as well. Let's check out what our weird locale is. Roll a d20. 17. A field of petrified soldiers or other creatures. Interesting, interesting. Now, by petrified, are they stone? Are they just simply frozen? Maybe this was, the original people here. tried if we do want to entertain Aboleth or Dragon, maybe they marched and tried to take down the dragons, and they were frozen in place, and so their statues exist as upright mummies to this day. Are ice elementals capable of creating weather conditions? Well, ultimately, Roxy, if this is your game of D&D, anything can do anything. If it makes sense and it works for your story, then have at it. TJ says, I'm currently contemplating getting in the bathtub right now. It's 37 degrees Celsius or 99 Fahrenheit at the moment with about... Oh, yeah. Yep, that's right. Here, we're like, yeah, we might... In fact, Canada is starting to get snow. Here in Ohio, we're like, it's really cold. It's definitely autumn. And meanwhile, you all are stealing our summer down there. Let's see. Jarl says originally was a bustling metropolis, then the ground softened to a state where it just sank into the soil, and made stilt towns. Ah, so the towns are kind of built atop the top floors of a city that was sunk down. That could be interesting as well. Stilt towns are legit. TJ says, I read that as spiders. Are there Australopithecus bones around those obelisks? If so, I have an idea. So that's the origin where they learned to wield a bone against the other, and thus, and thus humanity was born out of death and destruction. What's frozen? I'm sorry if I missed something. Roger says, or this is the gone bad version of Santa's workshop. The obelisk is the North Pole, and all the elves were turned to stone. Oh, jeez. Oh, it's the season. If you go shopping, you're going to see that stuff all around. And our downtown is already starting to get some decorations up. TJS, do I have Mordenkainen's? Because the Elder Tempest might be a good source of weather effects. I don't in an immediate fashion here, TJ. Hey, X-Cat, speaking of New Zealand. Hey, X-Cat, welcome. And hello, Fluffy Sheep. Doesn't sound like there's much difference between the conditions in the bathtub and out of it. That's a good observation. I guess unless it's a cold bath. Pardon. Okay, now, let's go to page 112. And we are going... Remember, this is like our central confederacy city, our special economic zone. As we've made a confederacy, and it's going to be like a bunch of stilt towns and other things along those lines that are going to be inside of this Arctic swamp area. I don't know, but you can if you want to owe me. Then I do not owe you a favor. Oh. I mean, TJ, you're still misspelling it because there's that extra U in there for some reason. All right, let's find out what the dominant race and a minority race are that are living in this area. I'm gonna roll a D9 twice. 2 and 4, which are going to be elves and humans. I mean, in a word that's supposed to have a U like supreme, I completely agree with you, TJ. But why waste a very good vowel when it's unnecessary? When you said wielding a bone against the other, was that meaning my other as the monster, or did you mean something else? It was a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the primitive humanoids Where or the Australia. Oh, come on. I mean, I just want to say like Unga Bunga cavemen. You know, the Australopithecus. Uh, our Neanderthal ancestors, or even the step before Neanderthal, discovered how to wield a bone against each other and use it as a weapon. Oh, TJ. Oh, TJ. Australopithecus. Thank you, Daily. I hope that as a random streamer on Twitch, seeing it and being able to almost immediately pronounce it correctly it carries some water for you all. Hey, you show me your dictionary and I'll show you mine, TJ. Jarl. All right, now our race relations between the elves and the humans. Let's find out what's going on between them with a D20. 2. Oh, okay. There is harmony. Oh, well, we have a confederacy, right? Now, the ruler's status is 14. A cabal seized power openly. That could mean that maybe a bunch of humans came in and took control of the government despite being the minority race in the region. Or, if it was, a bunch of wood elves that are the majority, a cabal of high elves might have come in and seized power. It could have been like a political coup within the elves or among the elves and humans. But something has happened. And this is good imagination fodder. Yeah, or something like Arctic or snow elves, Roxy. Snow elves and swamp humans. Human and elven harmony sounds like a place of half elves. I'm sure there are more than a couple half elves running around, XCat. Dwarves came in and said, "No, it's mine now." Hey, that could be it too, TJ. There could have been maybe dwarves that lived underground this whole time because of the geothermal tunnels. And so while you have, whatever, like 65% of the population is elf, and 30% of the population are humans, all of a sudden these dwarves came up from the tunnels. That there's enough of a ruckus going on or development, and they said, if you are going to live here, you have to understand you can't drive piles into the foundations because those are flooding our tunnels. And so you have this third party that came in and said, we don't care what you do on the surface except X, Y, and Z. And we're going to enforce that. Because I'll tell you what, if you keep messing around and driving piles down into our tunnels and flooding us and all this other stuff, there's going to be a ruckus. Winter Eladrin. There you go, TJ. These dwarves have been able to create weaponry and technology superior to all of the elves and humans since the Great Freeze. That could be, right? This whole time they just went down below. They've adapted. Maybe there's something, Flump was talking about some unique vegetation. Well, what if there's been some unique kind of magic developed or minerals that exist in this area? If it's anything like the Great Lakes here where I live next to, the Great Lakes were carved out by glaciers, right? So the Earth itself moved a bunch of, the ice pushed and carved all of this rock and everything out. And that did a lot of stuff for settling our limestone and for fertilizing our soil and really just mixing things up, let alone having a bastion of fresh water here in the Great Lakes. So yeah, we can put dwarves, tieflings. I mean, we could roll randomly if we want, or if you want to stick. If you like the idea of dwarves, this isn't my setting. This is our setting we're developing. Okay, now a notable trait about the region is, or perhaps even just this main city. It's the center of trade for a specific good. And by the way, TJ, you see how center is ER. What is the good? What is the specific good that that they are going to be trading? Tieflings, like Ice Devil Tieflings? That could be interesting, right? So instead of their Hellish Rebuke actually deals cold damage. Something like that. Maybe instead of Dark Vision, they lost Dark Vision, but they kind of, they have like a third eyelid that acts like polarized lenses. So they can't suffer from snow glare or other things. So actually, in this case, it would be like a bright light vision, as odd as it sounds. They can actually see in bright light that would otherwise blind people, and there could be some other benefits to that as well. In fact, those tieflings could be descendants of. Bing, bing, bing. Mud. They trade mud. And so is that mud as in like fertilization? Is it very high in nutrition content for plants or something? What if this sunken city idea, the buildings were made of really hardy material and these dwarves made their weaponry from that? The elves humans up top are basically impoverished due to swampy Arctic nonsense climate, and the dwarves took over with... Yeah, that could be it too. Or even the city that sunk was a dwarven city. They sealed up a lot of stuff and they just left the upper layers for whatever, even for camouflage, or they were just impractical to maintain. And something happened. If you have time towards the end of the stream, mind having a peek at the energy weapon stat concepts? Yeah, we'll see how that goes, XCat. I'm not planning on ending the stream early, but I'm not intending on going super late tonight. So we'll have to see how the stream goes. Otherwise, I can take a look at it off stream as well. And if any of you do want to give XCat some advice, that is over on our project workshop on our Discord. Okay. This area is known for its 16 high fashion. There could be some unique, maybe some unique animals, or again, certain plant life that grows that allows for fabric to be spun. Animals that exist, like, I don't know, ice spiders that, maybe their webs mimic, frost. And so instead of having pure silky strands, they actually, when they're making their webs, have a way to put, like, I guess, like little globs of sticky web instead of it all just being a straight line. And so maybe from these kind of frosty looking, like frozen dew webs, you can make something interesting out of it. Or there's all sorts of things we can consider. Actually, I was joking about the mud idea, but now that you mention it, some geothermic minerals are actually quite good for gardens. Or, you get some, hey, speaking of either chemistry or big words coming from random streamers on Twitch, diatomaceous earth. Look that one up. Diatomaceous earth. Ice spiders make really fashionable sequins. Yeah, it can be harvested. Or if there's these dragons or a particular dragon that lives in town, maybe every once in a while a couple scales shed and kind of bloop 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 float up, and people craft stuff out of the rare dragon scales. It could be special mud fluffy sheep. Every baseball used in the major leagues has to be rubbed with special mud that comes from a specific part of a particular river. I am not aware of that trivia, Fluffy Sheep. Unique furs are fibers that make excellent clothing. Yeah, so it'd be like trappers up in Canada and such, right? Seals and other and some watery mammals and such. Bioluminescent plants, they extract the fibers from them, making bioluminescent clothing. That could be a good idea too, XCat. Yep, TJ, Diodomaceus. Hey, Mini Donuts, every Tuesday. Well, almost every Tuesday, unless like a big holiday or something lines up with it. But I'll be sure to let you know on our channel. Or if it's really snowing out, I don't want my players to, I'm just kidding because we play online. So yeah, Tuesdays are our play days, and the other days are our workshops. Maybe they trade in rare herbs and that are indigenous to the area. Mm-hmm. Hey, Fluffy Sheep coming through with a link. Jarl says, oh man, since it's a swamp, what about a special kind of crocodile or alligator that has certain scales that make a really amazing trait or fashion, but also it's got a really great property of armor? It could be, and maybe, if there are reptiles that have adapted here, maybe they're either warm-blooded reptiles, and that could have an interesting effect. Maybe actually the crocodiles grow a kind of fur between their scales or something along those lines. And so it's this weird kind of like platypus where you just have a mammal that's not a mammal, but it is a mammal. Now, the current calamity going on in the region is going to be one. Uh-oh. A suspected vampire infestation. Now, if we don't want it to be vampires literally, it could be a type of undead of a different variety. It could be something else that could be considered parasitic or threatening, that might be able to walk amongst us. So we can take vampire as it is literally a vampire infestation, or we can use it as a springboard, and we get the gist. There is some kind of a secretive race or monster or a disease of some kind going around that is causing trouble in the area. Frozen swamp vampire bats. That's 100% our game, says Coffee Cat. Both the Fae and Vamps are invading. Yes, they are. Suspected lycanthropy outbreak? Hey, yeah, so people are turning into werewalruses or something. That is going around, Fluffy Sheep, isn't it? TJ says the crocodiles live next to the thermal vents and, in a way, guard the rare plants that grow there. Ah, so they are native. They're not adapted necessarily. They're cold-blooded and require heat. And of course, they're going to sun themselves, or in this case, warm themselves in the water by those vents. But so too do those plants and other things live in close proximity, making it very, very dangerous for people to go and harvest these plants because it is crocodile territory, and they're going to be very aggressive about that. That's not a bad idea at all. They eat and also protect the plants that give them the property that makes their fur or scales so valuable. An giant Arctic rat plague. Hey, yeah, you have a closed environment like that, right? None of the rats or vampires or whatever want to leave because they're just going to freeze solid once you get outside that warming radius of the swamp. And so anything that comes in may not always make it back out. The plants are difficult to get, but the rewards can be quite lucrative. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Now, we don't need to, we aren't necessarily going to generate an entire village here, house by house. We can use things like this for reference. There's another good website that'll just automatically generate a city for you if you'd like. But there are a couple things that I think would stand out. You know, here there's if there's a religious building of some kind, because this is a big cultural it's a big cultural point. Let's determine what kind of religious building is here. This could go into their faith, the faith of the local people here. 10. A temple to a good or neutral deity. And at least in this major city that is kind of like the center of these other stilt towns that are forming a confederacy, we have a major tavern. Everyone knows about it, and it is going to be called the 1420, the Frowning Star. Why is the major tavern in the sort of Washington, D.C. of this confederacy called the Frowning Star? What happened? Did a meteor fall? Is the Frowning Star like a nickname of someone who explored and discovered this? At least after the dwarves apparently slunk away underneath the earth. And something rather unique about it is 19. It is also a brothel. So apparently, this is a legal act in this confederacy for people who wish to stay warm. You can have a companion to help drive away the cold of the evenings. Originally, it was the Drowning Star, but has been gradually misheard over the years. It's named after a particular crocodile. They're referred to as the Frowning Death due to their face shape. It's a cabal of prostitutes that seized control. The day the original city fell, the comet flew over in the shape of a frown. Oh, yeah, right? Woo! Interesting, okay. A sad bard opened the tavern after losing their voice. Oh, jeez, X-Cat. Santa's workshop still works with that religious building, says Daly. The take on that where all the elves were frozen over and town name just completely randomly, you know, but I like T. Jarl's Fate. Oh, the prostitutes are vampires. So through this legal trade that a lot of people may legitimately seek warm companionship. In fact, that might be a way to go from one city to the next. You have to travel in a group to kind of keep each other warm, and so you have very literal escorts, people who will help share their body heat. And because of the important role it plays in this area, whether it's like something like a venereal disease, is that term used anymore? Anyway, it could be something like that, or it is vampirism has afflicted these people who work and they travel all around, so it's spreading throughout the Confederacy here, causing problems. Most people might not notice that hickey is not a hickey. Since vampirism comes from succubi, what if the vampires are led by a succubus? We can throw in a demon, a succubus or an incubus into this. We can have an Erenes in its own way if you want to have a fiendish nature. TJ, you're liking the idea. We are making this place dismal, horrible, and just a crap place to live, but I want to go there so bad, says Jarl. I'm glad, right? This is compelling. And look, hashtag real talk. All of this was done by a couple random D20 and percentile rolls. That's it. And look at what we've developed here. Hot-blooded vampires, says TJ. And you know what? Have you all been thinking of some really good plot hooks if you were to run an adventure in this region? I think there's a lot of stuff here that you can use to work with. We have some political intrigue. We have some supernatural intrigue. There's always apparently finding a dragon out there, possibly. The adventurers can either deal with the Cabal, who's either evil or not, the vampiric prostitute dilemma, or go get rich and find some crocodile flowers. Yeah. Or they can hunt the big game. They can hunt the dragon or the dragons that live in the area. They can investigate, you know, what are these obelisks? What are they dedicated to? And don't forget, too, some nice random urban encounters. So if you're ever in a pinch, 10. Uh-oh, there's a drunkard shambling around. What's going to happen? If he falls into the water, are you going to leave him to the crocodiles or something else? Or are you going to go in and rescue him? Jarl says, you know, you've made an awesome scene when dragons are the least significant part of the story, although they're huge and a freaking awesome idea. Yeah, I mean, so we're saying that a dragon could be out there, but is that as relevant to your adventure as these other things to investigate? Maybe the adventurers find out that the prostitutes are vampires, but they are a necessary evil, as they provide the people with an enzyme that helps them survive the conditions. Ooh. So vampirism... So vampirism, if they require blood, maybe there's some sort of a, you know how like mosquitoes can inject like an anesthetic or an anticoagulant. Again, rando streamer on Twitch using an anticoagulant vocab word here, in order to keep blood flowing, right? And that would be warmth. So that could very well be the case then where this is happening. But you know, it could be a mixed blessing. In fact, the vampires might not even be necessarily undead. They could simply be aberrations. Someone was exposed to you know, a chemical of some kind, whether it was a derivative of the flowers, you know, or like a doctor or something was researching how do the crocodiles. I know they swarm. They swarm around the hot spots, but they've been also found in other locations. How are they able to survive in the cold, at least for short bursts? And so it could be something that they eat, and you know, and so we actually have aberrant vampires, and so vampirism is really just sort of an antifreeze condition, but you have to, you know, you have to metabolize something else that comes out of vital liquids. Jarl's getting into it. Without vampirism, they basically drown in the air around them. Check out our hot, haggish women. Roxy says that's an interesting idea. Daly says, Maddie, we know you have a master's. Stop showing it with those linguistic skills. I mean, I do, but anticoagulant was not a part of my master's degree, I assure you, Daly. Make a symbiotic relationship between the people and the prostitutes, or again, I mean, that might be a part of it, right? In olden days sailing terms, they were called belly warmers. But yeah, you might have escorts that'll help keep you warm going from stilt city to stilt city. In that case, then, if that is something that that has come up, if we're considering something an infestation, then we're saying that something is wrong with this symbiosis that is occurring in our region. And if that's the case, what's going wrong? Is it going from a simple I'm going to bite you and sort of inject you with an antifreeze for your blood to I actually have to drink blood, or something along those lines? Like something is mutated. The outbreak's due to a small number giving into the primal hunger. The madam of the house invites the adventurers into the community to investigate, as they cannot be seen to investigate a rogue element. Flump says, "Oh wow, we went real high fantasy with this, huh? I walked away for a few minutes and now we're in vampire land." Well, welcome back, Flump. It's amazing how the creative process can really churn, huh? Yep, you can thank the dice for that, Flump. What if there's some true vampires hiding in these? Yeah, it could be something along those lines, XCat. And so that could be the infestation. Something's happening, or again, so vampire is a vehicle, and we can use that directly. There could be something going around too. There's some kind of a cabin fever that's settling in the region, where people are just, maybe there's a very harsh, I'd say winter, but I think this is just all the time. It's just, it's extra harsh. Like they haven't really been getting a lot of trade supplies or the like. And something's going around. Or again, it's a swamp. Bacteria and viruses and all sorts of life occurs in a swamp. Life and death alike. So there's adaptation and there's all kinds of things. What if that's the infestation? Yeah. I think we should try and tie the high fashion and vampirism. Well, I think the high fashion could come about in that regard. With these escorts or with the particular textiles you can make out of this, Arctic flax or I don't know, if these crocodiles do grow hair, then, you can like somehow shave the crocodiles and use their hair, which is extra. Like, it'll keep you warm, not just if it's dry, but it'll help keep you warm in the water, too. Or again, like, are there these, like, frozen dew spiders that have a silk that you can make into one thing or another? The northern lights are driving them mad? Hey. Yeah, like a full moon to a lichen, a werewolf, right? Maybe the high fashion is the reason for the outbreak. A batch of corrupted fibers is affecting the escorts. Actually, what that reminds me of, in Final Fantasy XIV, there is a similar crocodile, quote unquote, that exists. And they generally look like this. But when they attack, it's almost like a Krenshar, if you're familiar with that monster. But anyway, their faces kind of open up, so they actually have a mouth that's tucked back here. They do have scales and such, but they also have a fur that is grown over in order to help them survive in an Arctic region. Maybe the high fashion is the reason for the outbreak. Okay, so like the itchy blanket, but for vampires. Happy Donut says, did a final touch-up on the characters Minnie and I are making tonight with diadems. We are excited for this next weekend. We're planning on eating food that represents our dwarf and elf races for the sessions. Got to prep with a lot of snacks. I think you may approve of our characters. I did see the content that you had, especially the mini that you found for that dwarven samurai, and I hope you have a lot of fun. It looks like Diadems is running 3rd edition or 3.5, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a solid system. For what we're doing, Happy is, I mean, anything that we're talking about now can be used in 3rd edition, 2nd, 4th, whatever. Though if we're talking about the mechanics of the game, remember that we're doing 5th edition here, and it looks like Diadems might be running 3rd edition. That said, that's where I started playing D&D, was in 3rd. If you have any questions, obviously Diadems can help you out. But myself and others have put in some work in 3rd edition, and we might be able to help you with that as well. Well, I think you all have a lot of great ideas, and in fact, ideas, dragons, vampiric escorts, rare flowers. The mud, we're talking about that. The mud may have special properties that are at the bottom of the the swamp here. Mutated crocodiles. Survival. Politics between the insurgent dwarves and others. It could be if this is Arctic and there are northern lights, the northern lights causing madness or reactions. Daly says, I like the thought of a high-ranking member of the Confederacy has introduced a rogue element or some kind of disease that changes the vampire element. It will allow him to take out the other leaders' solidified power and try and attempt to move from the Confederacy to an autocracy. Hey, there we go. So it could be a political... I don't know why I'm capitalizing. Anyway, a political shakeup to shift the Confederacy to an autocracy. Jarl says, oh, and also, Ice Devil / Tieflings? What if it's not natural? Another campaign idea is to get the region back to habitable quality, and the underdwarves have some kind of way going about it, and the adventurers likely have to go under into the ruins to rectify the calamity. So what if something is not natural? Oh, so what if the snow and blizzards isn't natural? Well, if it's caused by a dragon, hey, just kill an ancient white dragon, and that'll set things straight. However, think of this. While life is hard here, life is hard, and this is a very interesting place. At the same time, you have to have these conditions in order to live, as things exist, or to have these... Oh, you brought a ball. Are you going to play fetch too? That was quite the meow. Hey, Richie, you want to get the ball? Ready? Ooh, go get the ball. Yeah, exactly, TJ. But the rewards can be lucrative. The dwarves of the Duragard? Yeah, we could have something along those lines. And that's their contact with dwarves, right? Meow, did you bring it back? You did. My gosh. You know how to play this game. Ready? Go get the ball. The ancient dragon is already dead, but cursed, and they need to return something to its corpse. Yeah, I mean, you... Alright, now you just... Sir, you can't just come in here meowing. I'll have to see if I can reach this, even with my little grabby hand. Yeah. Hey, what's this? You want the ball? Hey. Okay. Whoop. You need pirates. I don't know. Do you need pirates? This would seem like a very... I'm sure that... I don't know. Maybe. I think something that's missing would be... How do you get from one city to the next if you do have to go overland in between appropriately thought out parts? And it could be something like an enzyme that these vampires, that these adaptive people... so they'll drink your blood and sort of like replace a portion of it with a natural antifreeze, and they'll escort you to provide you warmth or something from one city to the next. Or do they have tunnels that are above or below the surface of the ground? And also think of this too, with how this is stationed. And I'm saying stationed as well as, it's not really a pun, but as part of the reference. We're talking about infestations. Have you seen John Carpenter's The Thing? Camels? I mean, sand and snow can share a lot of properties. You know, some sort of a shaggy camel. You got to have a local military or merc-themed bar. I'm sure that there's places that the cities in the Confederacy, that the militia or whatnot would hang out at. Go along geothermic canals. That could be Jarl. Camels that are native to Arctic lands, they're just adaptive. Yeah, so they probably still have the very soft pads to their feet so that they can walk on the snow, and then they just have a lot of shaggy hair, and they probably store a lot of fat, not just water and such, with their humps. And so maybe, I don't know, they have 2 or 3 humped camels, or they have evolved in some capacity, or maybe it's a camel with sort of like a throat sac of some kind. Yeah, exactly, TJ. All right, so we have a lot of really, really good ideas. Here, I'm going to put down snow camels. Geothermic canals. Pirates. You know, pirates and bandits are always around. All right, let's get up and take a break, everyone. Let's take 10 minutes, use the restroom, get a drink, get a snack, do what you got to do. And when we come back, let's take these concepts and make a map that would show this region containing this confederacy. And I normally use MS Paint, but we're going to be using a software called Wonderdraft, which is really easy to use, and even a scrub lord like me, who's not very artistically talented, can use it, and I can show you how. But also, I mean, if you have any input or we want to make these ideas come to life, I think we can very easily do so. So let's come back in 10 minutes, everyone, and let's take these ideas and put them to virtual paper, okay?